Before we get into Japan, I want you to remember something. Think back to the first bank account you ever opened. Maybe you were a child, and maybe it was your first paycheck. You looked at the balance and probably thought, that's my money. But I certainly understand why you would feel that way. The number was right there with your name beside it. But did anyone explain to you that a bank deposit is actually a claim on the bank? Hold on to that thought, because by the end of this presentation, I want you to look at that bank balance again and understand exactly what you own and who has to perform and why that distinction matters. Today, we're going to answer the question, why did America help rescue the yen? Well, something happened with the Japanese yen that looks an awful lot like a currency story. But underneath, it is something much bigger, because Japan is one of the world's largest holders of U.S. debt. So when Japan needs liquidity, its currency problem can become our Treasury market problem. And I want to show you a platform and a pattern. 1929, the 60s, and today. Different circumstances, same underlying problem. When the claims get too big, the system changes. Now, if you want to understand what these headlines are really revealing about the system underneath them, subscribe and stay with me. We'll be uncovering the hidden truths behind the stories and why they matter to you. So the U.S. backing for yen actions marks a new normal in coordination. Well, that's what caught my attention. The yen came under enormous pressure, and the United States became part of a coordinated response. Why? Because, again, Japan holds enormous amounts of U.S. Treasury securities. But those treasuries are not piles of dollars that are sitting in a vault somewhere. They are claims on the United States. So if Japan needs dollar liquidity, those claims can matter very, very quickly. So ask yourself, what happens when one of America's biggest lenders needs to turn its claims back into liquidity? Now, the yen story is no longer just about Japan. And this problem did not begin today. Look at what happened as the financial system expanded. Gold reserves remained relatively contained and constrained, but above them, debt, credit, currency, and financial claims exploded. Well, that works as long as everyone doesn't demand settlement at once. Think back to your bank account. You never asked the bank to show you the exact dollars with your name on them. You trusted the claim. Claims can expand enormously while trust remains intact. The weakness becomes visible when that trust gets tested. And by 1928, the warning signs were already there. Credit conditions were described as extraordinary. Money was pouring into securities speculation. That sounds awfully familiar. I don't know. And at the same time, gold was flowing out. Think about that. In the 20s, financial claims were expanding while pressure was building against the monetary anchor underneath them, because that's what gold does. It limits the level of claims. Well, you can see how they got around the system, but as long as people accepted the claims, the structure kept functioning. But what happens when confidence changes? And what happens when people stop wanting the promise and start asking for settlement? So that brings us to 1929. 1929 did not create the underlying problem. It exposed it. Confidence broke. Asset prices collapsed. Debtors struggled. Banks came under pressure. And people who had trusted the numbers on their statements began asking for something more certain. They wanted settlement. Now remember that first bank account. The balance told you what the bank owed you. But it did not mean all of that cash was sitting there waiting for every depositor at the same time. That's the fractional reserve system. But suddenly, the difference between the claim and the asset, well, frankly, that really mattered. And when too many claims demanded settlement, the system came under enormous pressure. And what happened? Banks failed. Gold was demanded, and eventually, they changed the rules. In 1933, Americans lost the monetary relationship with gold that they had previously had. That is the first pattern. The claims did not disappear. It was the system underneath them that changed. Now look at your bank balance differently. And don't only ask, how much do I have? Ask, who owes it to me? Who must perform? What am I entitled to receive? And can the rules change? Those are ownership questions. Now fast forward about 30 years. Different players, same structure. Under Bretton Woods, foreign governments accumulated US dollars. Those dollars were claims that could ultimately be presented for gold at the official price. So instead of you walking into a bank asking for cash, foreign governments could still come to the United States asking for gold, even though the public couldn't. Different scale, different participants, but the same question. What happens when the claim holder asks for settlement? And those claims, they kept growing. Eventually, foreign dollar claims became larger than the US gold available to honor them at the official price. That's the problem. The promises became larger than the collateral. So when that happens, and when you have issued more claims that you can comfortably settle, either reduce the claims or change what the claims are entitled to receive. History tells us what happened next. In 1971, the gold window closed, which sounds ever so, they just closed a window. So interesting. But in reality, foreign governments could no longer redeem the dollar claims for US gold at the official price. The dollar kept the same name. People still held dollars, but the promise underneath the dollar changed. Think about your account again. The balance can still be there. Your name can still be beside it. But the rules governing what that balance means, they're changing. The name can stay the same while the underlying reality changes. But now, let's bring that pattern forward. Foreign governments hold enormous quantities of US Treasury securities. Those securities are also claims. Japan is a major holder. So if Japan needs liquidity to defend the yen, its reserve assets become part of the equation. One country's asset is another party's liability. Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. That's counterparty risk. And that is how a yen problem can easily transmit into a US debt market problem. And suddenly, the headline is revealing something much, much deeper. Claims are what connects the system. Now today, the system is vastly more complicated. Treasuries, bank deposits, central bank reserves, repo agreements, derivatives, foreign reserve assets, digital financial claims, different plumbing, same question. What happens when too many claims need liquidity or settlement at once? Now, let's broaden that first bank account memory. Your brokerage account, your retirement account, your pension. What do you actually own? And what is a claim requiring somebody else to perform? Could the answer to a system filled with claims be not fewer claims, but maybe, just maybe, a more efficient way to manage them? Because now we're building new rails. Stablecoins have been brought into a federal framework with policymakers openly talking about strengthening the dollar through them. Look, there can be real advantages. Faster movement, more efficient settlement, easier transfer of collateral. That one scares me. But here is the challenge. Efficiency does not eliminate dependency. Sometimes it simply moves the dependency. So when you hear how convenient the next system will be, you also have to ask, who controls the rails? Who writes the rules? Who must perform? Can access be changed? That's not fear. That's understanding what you own. Now look at how interconnected the structure has become. Banks depend on markets. Markets depend on collateral. Governments depend on buyers. Currencies depend on confidence. And increasingly, each claim depends on the other claims functioning properly. So the system needs mechanisms to prevent that disorderly settlement. There is the moment that you should recognize. The claims are so interconnected that keeping the claims functioning becomes part of keeping the system functioning. So now I want you to ask yourself, what sits underneath all of those promises? Look at the scale. Derivatives, credit, securities, currencies, layer upon layer of financial claims. Now think about your own financial life, your bank statement, your brokerage statement, your retirement balance. They're all numbers. But what does each number represent? Is it the asset itself or a claim on somebody else? And if indeed it is a claim, who must perform? Now, if this is making you look at your own accounts differently, tell me in the comments. This conversation may help somebody else see the distinction too. Now look at how the biz describes gold. Durable, highly liquid, an official reserve asset. And we certainly have seen that with the global banks. But the phrase that I really want you to focus on is zero counterparty liability. After everything we just examined, those words should mean something very different to you now. A bank deposit has a counterparty. So does a bond. A financial contract has a counterparty. Somebody has to perform. That isn't you. You've already given them the value of your work. Physical gold itself is not somebody else's promise. It's the asset. That is the distinction we've been building toward, and that I hope you can start to see. Different centuries, different governments, different currencies, different monetary systems, yet physical gold moves through all of them. The measuring sticks changed. The rules changed. The gold remained gold, and now, return to that first bank account balance one more time. The lesson is not, do not use banks. Banks serve a purpose. Claims serve a purpose. But the lesson is know when you own a claim and know when you own the asset. And how about owning both of them? Then make that choice intentionally. Now we arrive at the question that matters most. Does this hold the value of my work over time? So go back to that first bank account. Maybe the currency came from your first job, your first paycheck, mowing lawns, babysitting, anything. Whatever it was, that balance represented something much more valuable than a number. Your labor, time, and energy. That is what savings really are, a piece of your life to carry forward. So the next time you look at your bank balance, don't just look at the number and think, that's my money. Ask, what exactly do I own? Who must perform? Who controls the rails? And can the rules be changed? Does this carry the value of my labor forward? Because look at the pattern. The public tested the bank claims. The 1960s, foreign governments tested dollar claims against gold. Today, the claims are enormous, global, interconnected, and increasingly digital. Different eras, different technology, same structural problem. But when the claims get too big, there you go, the system changes. So the question is not only what are they changing next? The more important question is, what are you doing now to make sure that the next system still protects the value of your labor, your savings, and your future? That is what the sound money movement is really about, and that is what our sound money strategy here at Zang International is all about. It's about understanding the difference between a promise and an asset, between permission and possession, between currency that can be changed by policy and sound money that has carried value across generations and centuries. And none of us has to do this alone. There's power in numbers, and there's power in community. Every person who learns to ask better questions, every family that builds a stronger sound money foundation, and every person who chooses to own physical gold and silver is helping move us toward something much, much bigger. A monetary system built on honesty, accountability, and redeemable sound money. What a concept. So if this helped you see the headlines differently, please share it with somebody you care about. Tell me in the comments what this brought up for you, especially when you think back to that first bank account and what you believed you owned then and how you think about it now. And if you're ready to strengthen your own foundation, our Zang International Strategy Specialists are here to answer your questions and help position physical gold and silver around what you are trying to protect and accomplish. Because once you understand the claim, you can make a different choice about what you own. And together, I know we can bring sound money back to the public. And until next we meet, wherever you are in the world, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, sovereignty begins with what you choose to own.